and I don't ever wanna leave. This situation got me so lost for words, but I'ma try to tell you how I feel.
Hey, what is up, Shiver and Fear fans? It is me, AJ Hard, and oh my gosh, I have been trying to get everything set. So hey, how's it going? I see that we have a fan here, Anthony Bar O M U. How's it going? So if you guys are not sure what's going on here, I am letting you know right now. We are going to do an interview on my brand new book series, Magical Times, and right here I have like a few questions that fans have asked me about my book series Magical Times. Now I know a few of you know me as the author of Shiver and Fears, and I'm sure you guys are wondering, well, when did Magical Times come out? When did, what is Magical Times? Well, we're going to answer a few questions about Magical Times right this second. All right, so before I get into that, I do want to say that this video is brought to you by Shiver and Fears, of course, and we are starting a brand new product with Shiver and Fear Boo keychains. So we are doing Boo keychains. I don't know if you've heard or not, but they are really sweet. They're nice to have. We do make different colors, but this was the prototype design, and we are going to be working on a brand new design later this year. So if you're interested in our keychains or our badges, of course, because we do have badges, let me know, and we can get one to you. Now, I do want to say that during the interview, if there is a question that you want to know about Magical Times, go ahead and comment below. We have no problem answering questions, but do want to let you know that if you do have a question that is a little bit uncomfortable, then it will be skipped. So before we do that, let me pin this question. So, all right, thanks, man. I really appreciate it. So, anyway, I was talking to some fans about the books that I write and stuff, and I don't know how it came up, but a kid asked me about what is Magical Times, and I was like, "You don't know about Magical Times?" And he was like, "No," and I was like, "Oh, I need to do an interview about that." So I talked to my number one fans and asked them, "Hey, what do you want to know about my new book series?" And they were like, "Your new book series?" They were all shocked. They were like, "Your new book series?" And I was like, "Yeah, Magical Times. What do you want to know about it?" And they asked questions. And so we're going to answer those questions. So if you are one of those fans who are want to know about Magical Times, then your question is here, and um, we're going to answer it. So So, one of our questions is, of course, well, what is Magical Times? So, the story behind Magical Times is when I was in high school, I wrote a story, and it was supposed to be like a spontaneous story. It was basically a story about my life in high school, how things are going, what things are like, and the whole plot was it was focused on me and how there was this kid. Here's the thing. So, when I started writing the book, you didn't know who the main character was. You didn't know their name, and there was this guy that was a bully to him, but apparently they were somewhat friends, and there's this whole entire story behind it. But it's basically just like a simple "this is about me" book. Well, and since this book is not published, I can tell you the whole story because I don't know where this book is now. But the story ends with the bully calling out the main character's name, saying that hey, we're best friends, and so that's how um, Magical Time started. It was a book idea about just telling someone's life and how it goes. Well, it was just a story. It was just a story idea at the time. So what happened was, around that time, my sister had moved in with us and was a total hassle. And it just made me think like, what if she moved into my house? And then just all these ideas just started to flow. Like, what about my kids? And what if
Hey,
they,
agent, when you gonna do? Going to church?
Yeah, I'm going to the church this afternoon.
At what time?
9 or 6.
6.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to take these bicycles over here to bring you.
All right.
See you later.
See ya. So anyway, hold on, what? So it's like
I'll be back, man.
oh, sorry, yeah.
Lock the place up, man.
Sorry. But anyway, so what I was saying was so the book series was just a whole bunch of ideas came into mind, like what would my life be in the future, and what's going on, what would be going on in the future. And it's just like I put that book on hold. I put that book on hold because I was like, I want to focus on Shivering Fears because I like Goosebumps and I want to do like a Goosebumps series. So when I started that book, um, it wasn't just a fictional factual book, or how what's that genre called, um a realistic fiction book. What's that genre? I forgot the genre, but anyway, a genre where you can talk about real life but it's not technically real. But I just started thinking, like, where did these twins come from, and where these characters come from, and it became a fantasy book. And one day I just decided, you know what, let me take a break from Shivering Fears and start working on this fantasy book. And as I started getting into the fantasy book, it started to become a fictional fantasy. It became a fantasy Christian book. Sorry, I'm lost with words. So it became a Christian fantasy book, and it was it was interesting as the story goes on, because there's so much going on. It relates a lot to me in some sort of way, but it's not about me. I didn't want the book to be about me. I didn't want to talk about me. So the bully. Okay, I see that you're talking about the bullies. Sorry, I didn't understand what you were saying. Yeah, so the bully. So the thing is about the first story was it was about me, but you didn't know it was about me, and he talks about how he's going through high school, and there's this guy who treats him like a jerk, and they don't really like each other, but they were friends. And then just something within that story softened the bully up, and he admits, like, yes, we are friends. So it's kind of like that friend. It's kind of like that friendship that wasn't meant to be just comes back and is meant to be again. So it's just that happy ending. But yeah, so that's what happened in that story. But it started the idea of magical times. So um, I have a fan who asked, "Are there any dragons in magical times?" Um, well, and your English is fine. It's all right. It took me a while, but I got there. But are there any dragons in magical times? So I gotta admit, when I was asked this question, I was surprised. I was like, "What makes you think that there's dragons in magical times?" And started thinking about the genre. The
Hey, what's
genre
on, man?
is the genre is fantasy, and I started to realize that fantasy does relate to like dragons and stuff, all sorts of stuff like that. And so I was like, oh yeah, since you really don't know anything about magical times, the title itself doesn't even tell you what the book series itself is about. And so when he asked that, I was like, no, huh? Why would you ask that? And I was like, oh, fantasy. So yeah, magical times. And so I was like, um, I'll get to that. But yeah, so he asked, "Are there any dragons?" So no, there's no dragons. The story is not set in the past. It's actually set in the future. So kind of started around this time, but it's like further into the future. In the story, there are like new devices that characters talk about, like cell phones that have holograms, or like electric skateboards and stuff like that. So it's kind of set into the future, not too far into the future, but like a recent coming up future. I see that we have a guest here who asks, "Are there any ghosts in magical times?" Yes, yes. There are a few characters, and I guess I never really thought of them as ghosts, but there sometimes there are ghosts. Yeah, sometimes there are ghosts because a lot of characters um, are coming from heaven. A lot of characters are coming from heaven. Some of them are angels. I mean, that's the most common way we introduce them, as angels. But I guess since they are kind of invisible, they would technically be a ghost. But so yes and no. Like I mean, because they are deceased, but they're not technically ghosts. So I actually don't know if an angel is considered a ghost. I guess some way. I don't even know if there's a difference. So in a way, to me, yeah, there are ghosts because they're angels. Um, oh, you're right. You're right. So yeah, there's no dragons, but there are ghosts. There are ghosts. I have a friend here who asked, "What is the plot? What is the plot?" So Magical Times is about 10 or 20 years in the future, and it focuses on these twin brothers. It focuses on the twin brothers. They were given the gift of magical abilities when they were first born, and they were in these powers. They are supposed to be using them for they're supposed to be using them for good of other people. So the twins, they have to go through school. They have to learn about their powers, and um, they just have to live a normal life. That's the whole series plot. Um, the Each book kind of focuses more and more into the timeline. Um, I didn't really start that idea. I just kind of it was be kind of like a TV show where like different stuff happens at different times. So it's like, TV shows, they tend to like pop up in different directions at times. Like one day it's Christmas, and the next episode it's summer, then the next episode it's spring, and then the next episode is spring, and then the next episode is fall. Like you kind like TV shows kind of bounce around a little bit, but I didn't want that to happen, so I kind of put it in order. So like, they're going through school, they're going through Christmas, then then there's Valentine's Day, and it's kind of going in a specific order to so that way I feel like if we did it the way that TV shows did, then it would get a little bit confusing. So yeah, that's what I'm doing there. All right. So all right, well, have a good one. Thank you for watching the video. Definitely check it out when this interview is finished. Thank you. Um, okay, so we have a commenter here that says, "Oh yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe. Always like and subscribe. Sorry, forgot about that." Anyway, so we have a fan who had asked, "Who are the characters?" And I gotta say, that is a very interesting question because there are a lot of characters. How this story was planned out was that it was just gonna be about the family. It was just gonna be about the family and all the crazy things that they do. But then it started getting crazier when they went to school, and then it was like, well, these people are our friends. These are people are our enemies. These are people that we just know from school. These are people that we have crushes on, and it's just like it just kind of grew into this bigger mind. And it's like I can see why cartoons limit their um, limit of characters, because when you have so many characters, you have to involve them as many times as possible. You can't just be like, hey, there's this character, and it's like, what happened to that character? So I try to involve as many familiar characters as possible at times. Sometimes, sometimes they don't make an appearance at all. Sometimes they do, but I don't want it to be like, where did that character go? You brought him in one episode and he never showed up again in any other episode. So I try not to do that. So I try to involve as all characters as possible. But let's talk about these characters. So there are a lot of characters, but let's talk about the family first. So, um, this family is my family. This family is my family. This is this is about my wife, my twin boys, their sister, their pet dog, um, their cousins, their aunt, their uncle, and their grandparents. So like that's a big family right there. So they're all they're all living together, and they're all living in this one big house that I have. So now outside of the family, we can talk about the school friends. They're school friends. They have like three friends at school. They have friends from church. They have one of them has a love interest. That's kind of interesting. Oh, hey, how's it going? My day's going great. Um, hey, awesomeness. I'm glad you're subscribed, and just be sure to watch my videos and share whatever you like. Thank you. So so like one of them has a love interest. His name is AJ. So I forgot to tell you these characters' names. A lot of these characters are completely fictional because they're based off real people. Sorry, they're based off real people, but they're supposed to be descendants of people that I know. Most of them do make an appearance somewhere, but most of them are just descendants of people that I know. Um, this idea kind of came from how cartoons make sequels, and it's not focused on the same character that it was, but it's usually like their descendant, their son, their daughter, their nephew, you know, um, the next generation. So I do that because I want to um, kind of make it real, but kind of make it not real. So yeah, there's tons of non real characters involved in the story, but the main focus is AJ, CJ, Britt, and Steve. Steve is their pet dog, and he is training e- the kids to use their powers. All right, and so AJ, which his name is August Jordan, and his brother's name is Chad Jordan. When I made these names, I didn't want to go with the common A names. I didn't want to go with Andrew. Andrew's a common name. I didn't want to go with Andy. I didn't want to go. I wanted it to be somewhat cool. So when I thought of AJ, I kind of thought of a persona a personification of me that has a lot of chill factor. AJ is not the oldest brother. He's the younger twin, and he's very chill. He kind of reminds me of Alvin. He likes to wear hats backwards a lot. He does. He's smart. He's good in school, but he's very laid back. Um, he tries to stay out of trouble, but it just constantly comes to him all the time. So it's not like Alvin who's like always causing trouble. It's just AJ's just like excited, he's adventurous, he wants to try things, and so and that's just who AJ is. Now his twin brother CJ, Chad, he's a book nerd. He likes to read, he likes to study. He while his brother likes to do dance, he does tennis. So he's kind of in sporting goods as well. Um, the whole family's Christian, and Chad he wears glasses. That's how you can tell the difference between Chad and August. I came up with the name Chad because um, it was a simple name. Like I don't know too many simple names that start with C, and I was just like, Chad just seems so simple. Like just, and that's kind of how Chad is, how CJ is. He's just very chill. He's relaxed. He's brain smart. He thinks about things first before going into it. But he's always there for his brother. Um, so yeah, those are the main characters, and then they have a little sister Britt, who she has powers as well, and it's a common question on where does her powers ever even come from? Like, um, there's a whole story that explains why she got powers and everything, but she's kind of a side character. She doesn't really talk much. She is an attention grabber. She does want to be like in charge and like rule and everything, but she's just a small little kid. What's interesting about these kids is like AJ and CJ are African American. Meanwhile, their sister Britt, she's American. Now, um, I'm sure it doesn't make 100% truth behind that. So technically, Britt is mixed. Technically, they're all mixed, but like I said, I'm the dad, and I married an African, or not, sorry, not African, American woman. So the twins are African American looking. Their sister is American looking. So I wanted to do that because I like the thought of how parents can don't have to be the same race, and I like the idea of like a black child and a white child being related. That's an interesting that's an interesting mixture right there. I thought that like I really wanted Magical Times to be interesting, so I try to make it as interesting as possible. So Britt is this blonde hair um, white girl, and then like her brothers are black. One has glasses, that's Chad, and the other one wears hats, that's August. So yeah, those are the main characters. And like I said, they have two nephews. One of them is living with them. They have a niece, or sorry, they have cousins. They have one female cousin, one male cousin. Male co- they have two male cousins. One of them is living with them. One female cousin, she's living with them. Their aunt is living with them. Their uncle is living with them, and their grandparents are living with them. So like this whole big family is living under one roof. It's crazy. Um, I know this is a lot, huh? But we have a fan. We have one of our number one fans here, and they want to know what is this whole story about. And let's talk about it because there's a lot going on with this. So the story is about how around 2000, around this time, um, AJ AJ Hard and his wife Victoria had twins. When they had those twins, their grandparents, um, AJ's grandparents came down and blessed their children with powers because they were the next generation of twins in the whole entire family. The angels were the last generation, and these are the next generation. So because of this, they're blessing them with these magical powers. AJ was given the gift of casting miracles, which um, before this book became a Christian series, it was more about magic. So he was casting spells. Now he was not casting spells with like potions or anything. He was just saying a little rhyme and like doing his finger motions and stuff. He would do like a finger motion like, or he would like wiggle his finger, or he would write a letter or something in the air, and he would say a little rhyming phrase, and then something would happen. Um, when I decided to turn this into a Christian story a few years after writing the first two books, because when I was writing Shiver and Fears, a lot of a lot of people, my Christian family, they were kind of weary about Shiver and Fears because they were like, oh, well, is it about demons? Is it about monsters and stuff? And I didn't like that idea. I didn't like that idea that people were saying because you write thrillers, they're about demons. And so I told them, no, it's not about demons. It's a thriller. There's no, and I always have to explain to them, there's no killing. There are monsters. There are ghosts. There's vampires. Nobody gets killed. Nobody gets hurt. It's just one of those suspenseful story type things. Um, so I decided to give it a break and started on Magical Times. When I did, I had already written two. So, but I had never really explained like, hey, he AJ's a witch. I never explained that. So I tried to figure out how I could make his powers more Christian like. So we started calling his spells miracles. And then he was given these rules like, hey, you cannot just make any spell you want to. A lot of and like I made this rule because of the fact that um, a lot of witch stories, so like Sabrina the Teenage Witch, Charmed, um, Bewitched, they seem to have rules. It seems like, oh yeah, you can't, interfere with love, or you can't, kill anybody, or you can't, there's all these rules on like how to use your powers. Even Fairly Odd Parents, it's like you can't use your magic just whenever you want to. And I didn't like that rule because it's like, okay, well, if there was a need for it, I kind of want it to be like, if there was somewhat of a need for it, I don't want to set limits. So if there's somewhat of a need for it, I want it to be to where you can use it, but you can't. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, you can. So like, you can make someone fall in love with somebody, but you shouldn't. And I wanted that ability to be like a choice. Like, no, I'm not going to do that. I can do that, but I don't want to do that. Because rules kind of restrict the whole what you want to do thing. And it's like, I want to show that AJ and CJ are choosing to use their powers for good. And it's like, I want that to be like what goes on in the story, is that they're learning like, oh yeah, I can do whatever I want to, but I want to do the right thing. It's just, I mean, because really in real life, it's like, yeah, we have rules, but we do break them. And it's like, you choose whether or not to do that. And that's what I wanted AJ and CJ to do, is I want them to make the choice of using their powers. So AJ's can come up with any miracle he wants to. He just has to test it out first. He can't just automatically write a miracle down and just do it. Sometimes he will, and then it will like turn out wrong, and it was like, okay, well, I didn't specify on how I wanted to be done. So he always has to test them out. Once he has mastered the understanding of how he wants it to work, he writes it down in a book, and he uses it whenever he needs to. Like one thing that AJ can do is he can read people's minds. with his phone. So he can do this miracle where if someone's upset and don't want to talk, he can listen to his phone and he can hear the thoughts of whoever he wants to listen to. So it's kind of like a phone call. But the only problem with that is that if he talks into the phone, they can hear him. So it's kind of like an eavesdropping type power, but AJ does not use it for that. He only uses it when he wants to make somebody feel better, but he doesn't know how. So he wants to know what's making them upset and how to fix that problem. So it only focuses on the problem that they're having. It's not focusing on their whole thoughts. CJ, on the other hand, he has the powers to see the future. Now, when I came up with this power, I was fascinated with That's So Raven. There was a point in my life where I felt like I had the ability to see the future, and I was doing the same thing Raven was doing. You know how Raven like pauses, she looks out in the distance, has the vision, and then comes back. Um, I was doing that too, because there were times where I would predict things, and I was like, wow, I predicted that. So and I was doing that for a while. Well, CJ does that too, and one day I just thought like, why does he have to pause? Like that's not a required fictional thing. That's a Raven thing. So I tried to make it to where CJ is trying to control that to where he doesn't have to freeze to see the future, and also a part of that is he's trying to learn how to see any part of the future. So he's trying to see, so he's not just trying to see like one vision, and because that's what happened with That's So Raven. It's like she would have a vision and it's like it's not 100% clear what happened. And so she would try to fix it and then it would just turn into a giant mess. Well, with CJ's powers, he can see like, oh, there's going to be a food fight. What time? Well, what time is that food fight? And he can kind of control like what he sees in the future, um, and just be able to, oh, it's going to happen at 3 o'clock. See earlier into the future, later into the future, and so that way he's learning all that stuff. So that way he can get a full clear idea on what's happening in the future. Britt has the powers. Britt is their little sister. She has the powers to move things with her mind. So right now she's having the ability to just move things, pick things up, and have them drop. Well, recently she has mastered that to where she was wondering like, well, what is my power good for? If I'm supposed to be using it for good, what kind of help can I give by moving things with my mind? She has recently discovered that what she can do is she can um, think of something and it like travels to that person. So if like a person loses a pen, she can think about the pen that they lost and it travels to them. So that is a power that I thought of because when I created the idea that these powers need to be used for good, Brit's power was already created, and it was like wondering how in the world can her power be used for good? What good can you get out of moving things with your mind? And so when I came up with the idea of her being able to control things with her mind, I was like, well, if somebody needs something, she can give it to them. And but then it was like, well, then that would be revealing their powers, and it made me think like, well, there's nothing stopping them from revealing their powers. They can tell people if they want to. So this is a very interesting book. So because I'm not trying to go off the basic storytelling where everything's a secret, um, there are limits to everything, and there are situations. So AJ goes to a middle school and he has a crush on this girl. This is kind of the same girl that I had a crush on years ago, but um, she was not too fond of. She was fine as friends, but the fact that I had a crush on her, she didn't like that. Um, I really hope that she can forgive me for that little thing I did. Sorry about that. But Yeah, I did have a crush on her for a little bit. It wasn't a huge crush. It was just like I liked a lot of things about her, but she wasn't interested. So, but yeah, so he's showing interest in her daughter, and turns out she does kind of like him, but she's not ready for a relationship. Kind of what happened to me. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of characters. The AJ and CJ also have a neighbor who is their is kind is not the school bully, but he doesn't like them. He doesn't like AJ and CJ, and they're trying. And it's like that's one of the things about the story is that they're trying to figure out why their neighbor doesn't like them. They go to the same school and everything, and it's like they're they're wanting to know more about what's going on with that. So the whole story itself is just about AJ and CJ going to school and just using their powers whenever they feel possible. AJ will like try to use his powers for his own gain, but say that he's helping someone. So like, if he's seeing that someone's spreading rumors, he wants to hear their thoughts. So he'll cast a spell and hear what rumors going around, and he'll like try to stop it. But then like something happens to where it's like he made things worse because now people are suspicious of him, and now he's got to figure out how to avoid it. Or um, he'll use his powers to help somebody else, but it's only for his gain. Like listening to someone's thoughts to help them, but really just wanting to know like what are they doing? What are they truly doing? What are they truly thinking? Um, because a lot of kids are like that. So each story kind of relates to something going on, like something that's bothering them, and truly understanding the gist of their powers. Okay, so this was a story. This was a question that surprised me because of the fact that it was like that was a random question, and one of my fans had asked, "Are there cats in the story?" Apparently, he loves cats, and he wanted to know, "Are there any cats in the story?" Not specifically. Not specifically. As I said before, there is a dog. Steve is the family's pet dog, but he is no ordinary dog. He's a talking dog. He talks to the family. He can talk to anybody, but he was literally created by God. Like God created him just because AJ and CJ need to learn how to use their powers, and their parents can't really help them because they don't know anything about having powers. So God gave them a dog to train them, and he's like their pet dog. I mean, he does dog things. He, you know, goes to the restroom outside. He eats from a bowl. He's 100% dog. Like sometimes he does walk on his hind legs because he only because he trained himself to do that. It's not something that he can do just because he's a talking dog. Um, he likes to go outside for walks, and so he's not doing anything like reading the newspaper or like any oddball stuff like that. He's an actual real dog. So someone even asked does he chase cats? And we haven't really got that, but he's not really fond of cats. Steve is not really fond of cats, but he will try to give them a chance at times. But it's kind of just like a normal friendship. It's like if you don't like me, I don't like you, and I'm not. We're battling that. But there are different kind of relationship with cats and dogs. Like some of them are friends, some of them are enemies, some of them are nice while the other one's mean. And so I didn't want to give Steve any I didn't want to give him like a Tom and Jerry type friendship, but I also didn't want to give him like a common friendship. You know, I wanted it to be kind of just neutral. Like, you know, like, do I like cats? No, but I don't, you know, sit there and bark at them. Like, yeah, they torment me, but I have self control. You know, so I gotta say, if you're watching this right now, I'm glad you like cats, and you know who you are if you're watching this. All right, so we have another fan who has asked, "Who is the bad guy?" And when I I was about to tell him, I'm sorry, there are no bad guys, but I started thinking about the story, and that bad guy would be their neighbor. So the story about the neighbor is the neighbor is an old frenemy of their dad. So their dad, me, lives across the street from his old high school enemy, and they don't like each other. They don't like each other. AJ doesn't know why they don't like each other, but 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 their neighbor is holding this grudge to the point where he even tells his son not to befriend them because they're enemies. So AJ and CJ are trying to figure out exactly what it is that's causing this rift between their parents, so not only they can be friends, but the twins and um, his son can be friends. So they're trying to find a neutral comeback to where everybody's happy because that's kind of how I was in high school. I was that's kind of what happened in high school is that um, I was friends with this guy, and one day he just flat out hated me, and I put that into the story only because I was thinking about how it's strange to have that one friend who just automatically hates you, and it's like sometimes people can't really let that go because of the fact that it bothers them so much, and because they're a good nice person, it's like they want to know, but a lot of people are the kind of people that say just let it go. So I put him into the story, and I don't know if he's watching this now or not. Probably not because he doesn't like me. He still doesn't like me. But I wrote him into the story because I did cherish our friendship, and I do kind of wonder why it broke apart. Um, but I know he doesn't want to be friends, and I'm perfectly fine with not being friends. It was just like, but it was just the thought of what would happen if we became neighbors, and your kid and my kid became friends. It was a question that I did ask myself, and so I put it into the story. So the neighbor guy doesn't really, and the reason why I'm not giving away these names is not because they're based off real people or anything. Is that if you're interested in knowing who these characters are, then you have to read the book. So don't think that I don't have the name of these characters. I just don't want to give you the whole entire story. So yeah, if you're interested in knowing about um, these characters, their names, what they're like, what they do, then you can check out. Okay, all right. You can check out the Shiver and Fears books as well. Once again, if you have any questions, then hey, don't be afraid to ask in the comments below as we talk more about this. Sorry, I'm trying to get this code. Hmm. I didn't got locked out of my device. Okay. Um, Anyway, so what were we talking about? The villain, yes. The villain. So, yeah, the villain is the neighbor in a way, sort of, kind of. He doesn't do anything to really make it seem like he's a villain. He just does not like the he doesn't like the family. He doesn't like the family, and he's he doesn't do he doesn't do anything to consider himself a villain. Like he doesn't interfere with the family in any sort of way. He's just very he's just very, I don't like you, stay away from me. I don't want you around. He just has that hatred. And so I guess the reason why he's a villain is really just because he's manipulated his son to like not like them, and because his son doesn't like them, he treats them with disrespect. So for instance, like, sorry, I'm still trying to get this device on. So like for instance, like he'll spread rumors about them, he'll insult them. Um, he'll insult them. He'll um he'll just cause like all this non he'll just cause all this nonsense because he doesn't like them. Well, later in the series, he starts becoming friends, but then it's kind of a Rachel Ross relation friendship where it's like. We should be friends. No, we shouldn't be friends. I don't want to be friends with you. I don't want to be friends with you. We should be friends. So it's this roller coaster of friendship. And the reason why I did that for the story was because I didn't want the whole book series to be about solving the problem between the parents. I wanted this to be focused on doing the magical powers and mastering and using them for good. But um, it was kind of like, well, at some point it became kind of complicated to where it's like, okay, well, why in the world can't they be friends? And it was like, well, there was no answer for that. So, but as for now, the neighbor is the bad guy. Um, let's see. Our next question is from our number one fan from I think India. And he says, "How do the twins get their powers?" So, so I explained this earlier. So when the twins were born, they were given the gift they were given the gift of these magical powers from their great grandmother, who also had a twin sister, and their grandmother comes their great grandmother visits them constantly, daily, basically, helping them out if there's any problems that they don't understand, or if there's a situation that they need help in, or just telling them, no, you cannot do that. So, um, they got their magical powers from their grandparents, and they were kind of basically told like, hey, use them for good. Now the thing about the story is that there's this rule type thing where they can only keep their powers as long as they keep the peace in the house. So what that means is, so as you know, AJ and his wife Victoria are living with AJ's nephew, niece, brother, sister, mom, and dad, and his three kids, and his pet dog. And this kind of relates to um, this bickering issue that I have in my family, where the my parents are being too in control, and my sister is being bossy, or my brother's being lazy, or um, my niece and nephew are not being there's all this bickering around the house. And so like I'm not gonna say that I have an issue with my family. I don't really have an issue with my family, but what it's kind of focusing on is like there are disagreements here and there. Now, I never had a big bickering issue with my family, but it's hard to but in my mind it was hard to think that a family that big could live in a house with one ruler, you know, because I really, cause at the time I was thinking like, what if I had my own house? I wish I had my own house, and I was just like, oh man, but what would it be like if my brother was there, and my sister was there, and her kids were there, and his kids were there, and my parent, and what if we all had to just live together? But I was like, why in the world would I accept them into the house? And that's where the idea came from. It was like, what if they had to? What if they had to live with you? And it's like that would be a total mess. I'd be it would be a total mess. And so I just imagine like what would that be like? And so the story of that being the loophole, like, hey, you guys can keep your powers, but you have to get along with your family. So AJ and CJ have a really big responsibility. They have to keep the peace in the house. They have to work on their powers, and they have to handle school. They have to handle daily activities such as school, tennis, ballroom dancing, and a whole bunch of other stuff too. Um, this idea, this idea was just a plot hole for the whole entire thing. I do want to say, like, if you are interested in buying a Magical Times book, there it is right there. There it is right there. There it is. All right, that's one of them. If you're interested in checking out Magical Times, you can buy it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all sorts of stuff like that. But yeah, it was it was a hassle of a story. It was a very big hassle of the story. Um, but yeah, so that's all we have right now. If you have a question about Magical Times, go ahead and ask it. We have about 2 more minutes left before we'll wrap this up. So I'm just going to give you a countdown of 10 seconds. So here we go. If you want to know anything about Shiver and Fears, or if you want to know anything about my other videos, then hey, let me know. 10 seconds are up, but it looks like nobody has a question. So I want to say thank you guys for your support. Thank you for watching the video, and I hope that um, if you are ever interested in reading a Shiver and Fears book or a Magical Times book, definitely enjoy it. As for now, this is AJ Hard saying chill out, and hey, it's not just magic, it's fun too.